जय श्री श्री पंचतत्व भगवान की जय। विष्णु पदाय कृष्ण कृष्ण भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नित्यानंद नमो विष्णुपदाय कृष्ण विष्णवे भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशकारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे कृष्ण कृष्ण Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare श्री श्री राधा गोविंद भगवान की
Just do a little bit of chanting and Jai Ram Madhava and Hare Krishna as well. So thank you. Singing some prayers to the spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada.
Shapastaya Bhutale Shri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Vishnu Madaya Krishna Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachare Nilshesha Sundhavani Vasita Deshatari Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Did I need to put some water down there somewhere? Just,
Great. Fantastic. So, has everyone got their phones with them? An ominous question. Actually, I want to read from the Bhagavad Gita, but you can follow it on your phones, so you're permitted to use the phones if you want. It's on the 8th chapter, text number 15. It's called Attaining the Supreme. So this is going to be a questions and answers class as well. I'm going to ask questions and I'm looking for some answers. You can also ask questions back as well, and we can discuss a little bit. Mama petya punarjanma dukalayam shasvatam napnuvanti mahatmanaha samsiddhim paramam gata. Translation of that is, after attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. Since this temporary material world is full of the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease, naturally, he who achieves the highest perfection and attains the supreme planet, Krishna Loka and Goloka Vrindavan, does not wish to return. The supreme planet is described in Vedic literature as Avyakta and Aksara and Paramam Gati. In other words, that planet is beyond our material vision and it is inexplicable. But it is, but it is the highest goal, the net destination for the Mahatmas of the great souls. The Mahatmas receive transcendental messages from the realized devotees and thus gradually develop devotional service in Krishna consciousness and become so absorbed in transcendental service that they no longer desire elevation to any of the material planets, nor do they even want to be transferred to any spiritual planet. That is the highest perfection of life. This verse specifically mentions the personalist devotees of the Supreme Lord Krishna. These devotees in Krishna consciousness achieve the highest perfection of life. In other words, they are the supreme souls. It's born in the darkness of ignorance, and the spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So, just want to repeat that verse again. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. So, my first question is, why did these great souls not return to this material world? Why?
Because they emerge on the Supreme Soul.
No, and the merging is not a question, no. But what it is though, there's three reasons altogether. I want to read it again and listen really carefully because it's quite interesting. It's not a catch question, but it's they never return to this temporary world which is full of miseries because they have attained the highest perfection.
Heaven.
The highest perfection?
They found heaven.
And
Highest?
yeah, that's very close. That's something higher.
Yeah, they have achieved the place of God, which is actually the Vaikuntha or the spiritual world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and which is even beyond heaven.
Yeah.
Even all the seven lokas above
Yeah.
and below will have
It's
personal
beyond
details.
us. Yeah.
That's beyond.
That's very good.
They like overcome the materialistic desire. They uplifting themselves from the materialistic world.
Yeah.
So they right now they don't have any desire to be
Yeah.
getting something or blah blah blah
Mhm.
all the way up.
Yeah. That's not they're all.
Because they
they're
have reached the supreme universe, which is Golok,
Yeah.
the universe of Krishna.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Temporary world. Temporary world.
That's the first thing.
Yeah.
The reason is because it's a temporary world. They don't want to be in this temporary world because this world is temporary. That's number one. That's good. What's number two?
It is Dukkalayam. Dukkalayam means it's
Dukkalayam.
misery.
Miseries.
Yeah.
It's miseries. That's number two.
Okay.
Yes. So this is the first thing. These are the first two things. They realize this material world is temporary and it's full of miseries. And then the third thing you were all very close on, which is they have attained the highest perfection. They've attained the highest perfection. So therefore, for us not to want to go to this, not to want to stay in this material world, the criterion is to have attained the highest perfection. Because when you're totally full in yourself, you won't want to. You don't want anything else. You know.
Yeah.
So that's the theme here is attaining the highest perfection. Now, hands up all the perfected souls here who have attained the highest perfection. Great. Okay, I'm not among purely high souls. So in other words, that kind of implies as well that we're not perfected souls. You know?
You wouldn't be here if it is.
Yes, we wouldn't have come here in the first place, you know. But we did. We chose to come here, and that means that we're not on the highest platform. So that means that we're somewhat attracted to the temporary and the place of miseries. That's what it means, you know. Somehow or other, we're looking for misery.
It's like
You know.
ego.
What?
Ego.
Ego, yeah, ego. Ego. That's another major subject actually.
Yeah.
Ego.
Yeah.
Yeah. So therefore, we can conclude that most of our thinking here is somewhat faulty. You know, somehow or other we've got ourselves into this situation. You know, all of us, we're here. We're imperfect because the perfect souls don't. You know, they don't come here. But it does imply that there is a stage that we can achieve here as well. But now I want to go back on two verses because this whole chapter is about attaining the supreme, right? Means that we haven't got the Supreme as such, but we're trying to get there. And who's given us this lesson?
Krishna.
Krishna. Right. So who knows most about these things?
Krishna.
Krishna. Yes. But does Jehovah not know as well?
Yeah.
Or about Allah,
Yeah.
Buddha? Krishna is a favorite name of God, basically, you know, and it's often said that he's God in his most loving aspect. But it's not as if God cannot be in other religious systems either, because he is. It's like it's a spiritual science, and there's other spiritual systems by which people attain to God. And going beyond that, then we become involved in kind of sectarianism, or, you know, thinking that we're the best, we've got the best religion, better than you, and which leads to some kinds of conflict, doesn't it?
I think the question is like, how much does each religion allow God? How
That's
much
a
will
very
allow
good
God
point,
be?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's very, very good. So what's your first name?
Karen,
Karen. Well, Karen says, how much does each religion allow God? Almost, yeah.
fully agree.
Yeah, because it's like, you know, God isn't kind of silly. He knows each of us, and he knows how much we want to surrender to him. You know, he's actually aware of it. He's in everyone's heart. Yeah, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness, Krishna says. But he's in everyone's heart, and he knows what people's desires much more than we do ourselves. In fact, before we do anything, God gives us the permit to do it. You know, but he usually does it if it's based on our, you know, could be based on our previous karma. You know, we could be kind of conditioned in a certain way, that we act in a certain way, and that is being entangled in the modes of nature. It's been entangled in the modes of nature, and Bhagavad Gita and spiritual texts, and they give us information how to disentangle ourselves. You know, and what I said there earlier about the modes of nature, that's also important, because there are different modes. There's sattva, raja, and there's tamas. And tamas is and this is a force that's, it's, you know, it's kind of, this whole world is temporary and it's full of misery. Yet somehow or other we want to stay here. You know, so there has to be some kind of force that's really kind of convincing us to stay here. Like it's like we're kind of being beaten, and we're saying this is great, and we're getting beaten and beaten. Like because that's what the material world is like. You know, there's happiness and stress, fame or infamy, honor or dishonor. You know, like even if you take a normal day, you know. So if you wake up in the morning, some mornings there's a bill in the front room from the Gardaí Síochána, you were caught speeding. There's a fine, or there's a bill from the insurance company. There's you know, and you turn on the radio, which I don't recommend, but if you do, you hear all sort of negativity coming through the radio waves. And then you look at your watch and, oh my God, I'm late for work. And then you get into work and the boss says, well, you're late again. Well, anyway, I won't go on. You kind of know where I'm getting at. You know, so, but we still, the next day we're going to do the same thing, you know. We're not going to change unless we understand how to elevate ourselves beyond these modes. Because one of the important modes that we try to aspire towards is the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness is like a vehicle in which we can actually start to go beyond the modes. It's not, doesn't take us beyond the modes, but it helps us get to a stage beyond the modes. And that often begins with getting up early in the morning and chanting or hearing, reading scripture. Because at that particular time of the day, there's less, you know, problems coming in from 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, all the difficulties start and Rajas kicks in, you know. So it's sattva mostly in the morning time. So if we can actually acclimatize ourselves to a sattvic lifestyle, that's the first thing that we can do. And it has huge benefit. absolutely, there's practically nothing to compare with it. The whole material energy was set up that way. But instead, when we get up in the morning, we come to the program here in the temple, there's people going home at night after staying up throughout the whole night, which is, they've gathered all the talents that was there, every last bit of it, and then it's the morning, go to sleep. So they're kind of acting, wrongly at the different times in the day. So that gives us that sattva of which to face today. But this is the other one. This is the transcendental aspect of it, is Shastra or scripture. Whatever scripture it is that you're following. But this scripture, Bhagavad Gita, is very, very powerful. I haven't seen anything as powerful or anything like it. But it gives us information. So this whole chapter is called Attaining the Supreme. How we're going to attain the Supreme. It's very, very clear. It's very, it's very direct. It's not speaking some big high philosophy in the sky that no one can really understand. It's saying, do you want to go back to the spiritual world? Well, here's how you do it. So I just want to go back on a couple of verses, and this is 5 and 6, if anyone wants to follow it. I'll read the Sanskrit of the second one. And whoever at the end of his life, so is everyone listening? This is an important message from Krishna. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. The next verse, Yam yam bhakti smaram bhajam chajate ante kalevaram tam evaite konteya saratad bhava vitaha. And whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So what time of life is most stressed there for us as living in this world? When we're leaving the body. Yeah. So does it mean because I'm a practicing Hindu, therefore I'm going back to the spiritual world? No, not necessarily. Does it mean I'm practicing Christian? And it does help. No, don't get me wrong. I'm saying that the practicing element is very important. But it's not that you're nominally in one religion or another religion that dictates where you go. It doesn't do that. It's whatever you're thinking at the time of when you're leaving the body. And now there's certain aspects of that which we can just discuss later on. But it's whatever you're thinking of when you're leaving your body, to that state you're going to attain. So we've understood that when we're leaving our body is a very important time. So what do we want to think of at that time? Anybody?
Think about God, think about Krishna.
Think about Krishna, yes.
In general, it will be like our responsibilities, what we have with the family, how to settle things, financial things, that. That is in general. But if we practice thinking about Krishna regularly, maybe like what he said. It's not easy.
That was a good qualification there, because you actually said what tends to be the situation is that we're thinking about who will I leave my such and such to, and what about my poor this, my poor that, they won't get any money, or I'm not left them enough, or you could be completely absorbed that way. So what's going to happen in your next life?
The same thing will repeat.
Going to repeat again, exactly. You're going to come back in another form, in another body, whereby you'll be trying to make up for whatever it was that went on in the previous time. And that's a fact. Like this is scientific. We're not making this up. This is what Krishna is exactly saying. And the tendency, though, is, as you said, the tendency is for us to be thinking about everything else except Krishna. One time, my friend Santa Govindadas, he came from Kerala, I think, and he came about 2000 to Ireland. And one time he was asked to speak at one major festival. It was on Ram Navami, I think. And there were so many different activities that were going on. I'm not against people having a good time, don't get me wrong. But he was asked to give a talk, and he was so bewildered by what was going on. He said that this whole festival was about everything except Ram. You know, this whole festival was about somebody singing, somebody doing this, somebody doing that, somebody doing that, some party. This. He says this is supposed to be Ram Navami. We're supposed to be thinking about Ram. You know, and he's normally quite a quiet sort of person, but he was really very determined at that time because that's what the reason he was feeling is that because this is the most important time, and this is when we should be thinking like that or practicing thinking like that. So, how do you think we're going to be thinking about Krishna? We've established that this is an important thing to do, isn't it? From Krishna says. So how do we do it?
Are we conscious to choose?
This is one of the other questions that I was going to talk about, because often sometimes people seem to be sometimes in a coma or whatever. But I'll get back to that question because I was thinking of that later. But you can be, because I have seen different people leaving, and one of my mentors, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, she was saying that the people that you're with during your lifetime, it's good to be, spiritual with them because there's two things. Not that they come in front of you and they distract you from thinking of Krishna, which very often can happen. Oh, my wonderful wife, or my wonderful husband, No, but if you have a wonderful wife, a wonderful husband, wonderful children, they'll be chanting, they'll be speaking God's name. They'll say, no, go back, don't come back here again. They'll all have kind of got that consciousness, So they will be urging you on at that point. They'll have Tulsi leaf, Ganga water, but they will be urging you on to don't come back, don't be here, don't have anything to do with this. Just leave now. Go to the spiritual road. So the people that you have as people that are around you now, it's very important that they understand this as well, because they're likely to be the people that are with you at the point of death. So if that half answers your question.
Someone in fear sitting beside you, like.
Absolutely, because you need people who are realized, who knows what actually is going on. Because I want everyone just to meditate for a minute, just maybe close your eyes just for about 20 seconds and think about that you're about to leave your body. Just kind of meditate. Okay, maybe open your eyes again. So it could have been longer, but did anyone get any thoughts during that time?
Zero.
No?
The fact is, for a second I got something about, one day I know certain passwords. One day I know certain passwords, my wife doesn't know. That thought came, and then immediately it's like, everybody's father is Krishna, so he will anyway take care. Why should I worry about it? That I mean,
one of our friends, he was in Africa, and he was traveling from one temple to the other, and he had a bad accident, and he fell out of the car and was unconscious, and it wasn't completely unconscious. He was still somewhat there, and what came into his mind was an advertisement for Heinz Fairy Liquid. I don't know if anyone knows that advert. It was many years ago. That's what actually came into his mind. So he thought to himself, oh my God, I don't think I'm ready yet. But the reason that I'm saying that is that's the time when you really need to gather all your thoughts. You need to be very, very conscious, very powerfully thinking in that way. And because although a lot of the time when we see people in a kind of a meditative state, or whatever state when they're leaving, they may be unconscious or whatever, still the soul is active there. The soul is conscious, you know. And so therefore, the soul is actually, this is all registering to the soul. There's so many different scientific explanations about when people, they have out-of-body experiences, especially when they seem to have left their body. But then they come back again and they say that they were hovering overhead, they were just looking at what was happening, they were aware of everything. And this is this whole science that's done on this, and there's like literally hundreds if not thousands of testimonies of people who were able to identify various things that were going on around them when they were leaving the body, which they could not have known about. So therefore the soul is it can be very conscious at that point as well. But if you're very afraid at that point and you don't know what's going to happen, and even worse still is if you have been invoking negativity in your life, there's a possibility that a whole lot of negative energy could come to you at that point. So that's why I'm saying that it is a very important science to learn how to maintain the mode of goodness throughout your life, and then to be very clear about what this life is about, and to be very clear about where you want to go. So this whole chapter is called Attaining the Supreme, and there's so many descriptions of the spiritual world. But the third thing that I wanted to get from the verse is that because they've attained the highest perfection. Now, I think at the start of it, we all said we're maybe not on the highest stage, you know, because in one sense we're here, but we're trying to. But this spiritual science is so powerful that you can get an experience of a higher stage, you know, that will encourage you to go higher and higher. That's what spiritual life is actually about, and that's something which we build on. And there's a practice called sadhana bhakti. Does anybody know what sadhana bhakti is?
What?
Yeah, so it is like practicing certain things like maybe Nama Japa and offering prasad to the God and then eating.
Yeah.
So basically all these are called as sadhanas. And by doing that, at least we know that okay, we should be doing this, we should be doing the discipline and all of that. They have to lead us to a much higher state.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did everyone hear that? That's yeah. It's a practicing stage. We're not actually on the stage yet, you know, but we practice the stage. And then when we're practicing the stage, that is sufficient to elevate us gradually. So spiritual life, this is a very interesting point about spiritual life.
I have a question.
Okay.
So, why are there two types of words, like material world and spiritual world?
That is an amazing question. Thank you so much. That's an amazing question. And that's an amazing question. There are different ways to explain that, but I'm trying to find the best way to explain it is we are loving friends with God. We have a loving relationship with God, and in our natural state, we have great reciprocation with God. He loves us, and we love Him. And sometimes we kind of get a little distracted. We kind of take God for granted, you know? And then we kind of look away and we look at different things and we forget God. So when we forget God, that's the material world, you know. We're God's not there. We're just thinking, oh, I'm there and she's there and he's there, and we stay in the material world until we learn that, oh no, wait a minute, God's still there, you know, and I've forgotten God. How do I how do I go back to God? And then I see some persons who start chanting or tell us a bit more about God, and then we start to remember again, that's God. And then we go back to the spiritual world, and then we're back with God again. So it's kind of like a forgetting of it. Yeah, so thank you so much for that question. Is that okay? Okay, good. Yeah.
Maybe if you can put it in a more simpler manner.
Go for it.
Anything that will not be there forever is material, right? So we have people
They
around
build a
us.
temple in the material.
So they can be impermanent, or they'll be, not there forever. You are sitting on a cushion, that may not be there forever. You are seeing a table there, that may not be there forever. So everything around us, whatever you see here, you are going on a bus or a train, that may not be there forever. All of these are material, right? But there is another world called spiritual world, which is always like existing permanent.
Disembodied spirits mean nothing.
So that is
Disembodied spirits mean nothing without a temple. Temples are made of material energy, and they're there to assist spiritual bodies and spiritual knowledge for people to build their temples. They work in harmony.
I'm
Okay. Yeah. And funny, the next verse is very interesting as well. Abrahma bhuvanaloka punaravartino arjuna mamupecha tu konteya punarjanmana vidyate. From the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all the places of misery where repeated birth and death takes place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. So the more we hear about this spiritual world, we don't need to come back here anymore, because we're so satisfied. So and there's a phrase which is called Jivan Mukta Sarvachite, which means that we can be liberated even in this body. We can actually be in this spiritual world even while we're in the material world. That's a really, really important, nice place to go to. If we can be in the spiritual world even while in the material world. But that does take a lot of practice. But there's two important things that we need to elevate ourselves. Could anyone say what are the most important factors to elevate us?
Override.
Okay.
Feel pain. Accept pain.
Say again?
Go beyond pain.
Consistency.
Consistency in your practice. That's definitely very important. Yeah.
Develop detachment on all the material world stuff, and develop attachment towards the ever existing.
Yes, it's the attachment. Because when you develop the attachment, the detachment automatically happens. It's like by Vishaya Vinayvartante Harasyadeha, that one gives up these different tastes by experiencing a higher taste. And then the second automatically goes. But consistency is important as well, because that requires your own strong desire, and so that's one of the most important things, is your desire. Now, spiritual life is about all of us learning how to desire the right things, I mean, the material world and the whole, the whole industry which promotes you to buy things all the time, just the whole commercial industry, that gets you to desire the wrong things, It's kind of pulling on your wrong desires, but spiritual life is meant to increase your positive desires, and that way then you will not be interested. You'll be interested less and less and less in the material things. So that's one very important point. It's called lolya, means your strong desire to leave this world. You have to have a very strong desire to do that.
The unattached.
And the unattachment is quite amazing. It's almost an automatic, Because it's very hard to, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't, because you're still thinking of the thing. But if you're experiencing something higher, then you won't even think about the thing. So yeah, so in that sense, it's a kind of a trick of the mind almost, you know. Trick of the Maya. And then, but there's the other thing. Tell me what the other thing is, which is super important. Yeah.
Satsanga.
Satsang. Very good, very good, yeah. I'd love to remember that verse, Satsang. Lord Chaitanya said, oh, Tulsi's there. She's just coming out of China. And Satsanga means, that's how you know a devotee, by who they associate, and by not associating with non-devotees, in that sense. Not to say that you don't mix with people, it's not that, but it means you don't take their association. No. So, also there's another verse in Bhagavad Gita, Talvidi Pranipatina Paripashina Sevaya Protekshanti Tedam Gyanastatatarshana. It's in the 4th chapter 34. It's just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. A spiritual master can impart knowledge into you because they have seen the truth. And the way they approach it is through inquiries and service. And what else do you want to say about that? So in that sense, the spiritual guide is important, you know. The satsanga who are elevated, and then maybe in particular there will be a spiritual guide that will elevate us to another stage. Now the spiritual master is like a function in a sense. He's also a person, everything is personal, but it's a function to help other people because they're more full of, they have a lot of compassion, basically for and that I offer my respectful obeisance to all the devotees of the Lord, that's the Satsanga, who are just like the desire trees, they fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for all the fallen conditioned souls. So that's very, 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 very important in that sense that devotees, all of us, try to elevate ourselves to a certain degree so that we can help others. You know that we can actually give people the knowledge by which they can come to. Because the spiritual master is Krishna's agent in that sense, is God's agent. He sends them all over the world. Sometimes he sends his son, his messenger. Sometimes he sends a local guru, priest, whatever. But they're not just. It's not just. In one sense, it's an official role, but in another sense, it's not. And in the sense that it's not means it has to have an effect on you. There's no point in having a spiritual master if it's not, it's not helping elevate you. And the way that you can recognize one is that you'll feel more, inclined to practice spiritual life after being in their association. And then therefore you should get the association of all the people who are making you feel inclined like that. So there's so many verses about Mahat Sevam Dvam Vimukta, is that Krishna says that the Mahat, the service of the Mahat, and then by inquiring then because then they're very, very liberal. Their only goal is they want you to make advancement, and unfortunately there has been a lot of, I don't know what word you'd use now, but in all different spiritual systems, there are so many imposters, people who they say, oh yes, just give me money and I will make you, wonderful. And they're motivated, and they may have they might have some psychic powers, they may have some mystic powers or whatever. But if their motivation is to exploit, then they're like everybody else. And unfortunately, sometimes religions are magnets. They can be. Don't get me wrong, and say that they are, but they can be. So therefore, there's a whole sort of checks and balances that you can check in the Shastra, whether a person is acting properly as a spiritual guide or not. And there's Vaishnavas as well you can check as well. So these are all this is a science of spiritual life, that so to make sure that you make the most rapid advancement in the best possible time, in the best possible way. Because it can take a lot. It can take many lifetimes, if not, So is there any questions, any comments anyone would like to ask, anything or bring anything be stirred, anything's, yeah?
I'm actually fresh from Bhagavad Gita class, 18-day class from ISKCON Bangalore.
Oh,
So they spoke about, the Guru spoke about A, B, C, D, E. So basically,
oh yes.
association with
Association.
like the satsang basically, and
Yeah.
then reading scriptures or shastras like Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah.
B, and then C being chanting, that is Nama Japa every day.
Yes.
At least 1 or 2 or 16 is the kind of target. 16 into 1 or 8 times kind of target, but yeah, at least 1 to 2 times at least. Right? So then D is like diet, that means only eating what is offered to the god as prasad.
Yeah.
And E is observing Ekadasi, today being Ekadasi. Yeah. The
Well,
last.
Ekadasi in India today, I think. So, yesterday was Ekadasi in Ireland, Yogini Ekadasi.
Oh, yesterday was here.
Yeah.
I'm actually observing today, but
Okay.
it doesn't. Maybe next time I have to watch this calendar. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's very good. Yeah.
It is by service alone that it is possible to enter the kingdom of heaven. It is by service alone that,
Yeah, service
that
first.
it remains
Yeah.
possible
Remains
for one
possible.
to
Yes.
enter into the kingdom of heaven. It is the most important thing to is service.
I was talking with somebody today, and they made a very interesting point. It was a discussion. It wasn't like it was a dialogue. We were kind of teasing out different things, and they were kind of saying, they weren't saying. They were sort of. We had this discussion about chanting, because I think everybody knows we do chanting in the street, and at the beginning here we did chanting, and they were just kind of wondering how practical that is in the world when there's so many problems in the world, and we went back and forth on the discussion, and it was quite interesting. But if I was to put that question to the floor and ask, what are we doing? What does the Hare Krishna movement do?
Raising the vibration for others.
That's very good. Yes. Yeah, definitely. It's raising the vibration for others, because we had a class here on Friday, and we talked about Cheto Darpan Marjanam, Bhavan Maladavani Vapanam, and Shreya Karava Chandrika Vitaranam. I just want to read it out actually. It's one of the only 8 prayers from Lord Chaitanya, and that Lord Chaitanya actually wrote. I'm just going to here. So here it is. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtan, that's the congregational chanting of the Lord's holy names, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years. Okay? Years. And extinguishes the fire of conditional life, of repeated birth and death. So this is what's going on when we're chanting. And if we concentrate on it more, it even gets better. The greater the intensity, the better it is. The Sankirtan movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It's raising the vibration. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss. So there's a blissful ocean there. And it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. So our desire, everyone wants to, we're by nature pleasure seeking, all of us. We all want pleasure, but we're looking at it in the wrong places in the material world. This is good for you.
It's temporary pleasure in this world.
Exactly,
Yeah, to the last.
Yeah. I mean, it's temporary pleasure. It's just not going to, it's for a while. The amount of pleasure is minuscule as in comparison to the suffering that comes, But if we can regulate it to, not to go for that pleasure, but just aim for being able to renounce that and actually go for the higher taste, which is eternal, that just takes that bit longer, but it actually is really what cures us. So that's the taste. And so therefore we have kirtan, prasadam, and hearing, and listening, hearing about the scripture, hearing about. This is like you can hear about the news, isn't it? You could just turn on the radio and hear about the news, and it's gonna be deflating, Whereas if you hear about spiritual subject, you will actually become. And then one of the answers. Is there any other answer to that before I give one of the answers that I gave as well? About the holy name, or about spiritual life. Why is it better? Why is just the chanting, which all the Hare Krishnas do? Why is it not practical? Why don't we just? They said, why don't we feed people? We do. We actually feed people 4 or 5 times a week with Krishna prasadam, which is amazing. But why don't we help the homeless? Why don't we help people in the war-torn zones of which they live? Why don't we help why don't we do something practical?
I think it should be in a kind of a combination is what I would say it is ideal. For example, maybe we say Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, like the 2 examples that we gave. So maybe if you are doing offering and chanting and all of that, maybe yes, it is Bhakti Yoga, we should do that. But I think we should also be going out and helping, and if whatever capacity we have, I think we should also be doing Karma Yoga to some extent. And of course we are reading Bhagavad Gita, we are doing this talk, this is kind of Jnana Yoga. So I think we should be doing all of this in combination, and of course maybe meditation, mantra japa, nama japa is kind of Raja Yoga, all of that. Yeah. So ultimately I think we should do it in kind of a combination. Maybe one can be predominant. Maybe let's say if we are focused mainly on bhakti, yes, we can do that as a primary thing. We are naturally levitated towards something, that is okay, but I think we should do it in combination is what. After so much of hearing multiple gurus and all of that, I feel that is the best approach in my opinion, humble opinion.
Okay. What about, I'll just try out one thing. What about if somebody who's and doesn't believe in God, for instance, say for an atheist, so someone who's an atheist, and they're going and feeding people on the street, is that not a good thing?
Yeah.
It's not.
I mean, what they're doing separately is good, but without the fact that everything is because of, let's say, the Lord Krishna or the Supreme, the entity there.
Well, what I'm saying is that the motivation in which you do things is the most important thing. Because if you're going out to feed the person, basically they're going to have to come back to give it back to you in your future life. So you're helping them, but you're not helping them. Because because if we act in matter, there's equal and opposite reactions to it. So even if we do help the person, they'll have to come back and help us again, and we'll have to come back and be helped. So therefore, the consciousness in which we do all of these things matters. So that was one of the points that's there. Is that's just because somebody does something, like for instance, sometimes people are trying to help some people, but they're really harming them as well. Even the help. I'm trying to give an example of that quickly, but what comes to mind straight away. But that we have to understand that if we're helping people, we have to help them for their eternal benefit. Now, I think the other point that you made is very good. Is regarding we all have different activities to perform, and like I know you have several people who are nurses and doctors, some people who are psychologists and whatever. And ultimately, we may need to help the physical condition somebody's in, but our consciousness should be that we're trying to help people from a higher position in that sense, And the other, I hope I don't sound too arrogant there, but I'm trying to get that point across that mundane welfare work will not actually benefit in the long run. So the other point that I was trying to get at there is that there will always be problems. There will always be wars. There will always, in the material world, it's not meant for anything else. It's meant to be difficult because it's meant for criminals like us to be in there, and we're ultimately exploiting each other all the time until we start to take to the spiritual path and then we try to actually genuinely help people. So, but what the spiritual help and what we try to do is to give people the equipment so that they can live in this world and understand it and understand how to act in this world. So that they don't become entangled. Because it's very easy, like people, they're trying to be helped. So many people, great prime ministers, whatever, they did so much for the country and then they were killed by their countrymen. There's so many ways people try to benefit other people, but unless they absolutely know how to do that, then it is karma inducing. So that's why I was just trying to make the point that
Here you go, the Grim River.
I think that was
Only a baby river.
okay. Maybe I'm losing people here, but
What about the promise of like a heaven on earth? That heaven will be on earth, we'll all be living in a heavenly space on earth. That would be the end of the material world, how long will that take?
yeah, I've heard of that philosophy all right. It
I
doesn't.
want one second.
It is.
The whole
No,
7 miles deep.
Nigel,
Dropping
just a second,
nuclear
please. Nigel.
explosives.
No, I've heard that philosophy. It doesn't. I mean, for me, it doesn't synchronize the way it is explained in the Vedic scripture. The Vedic scripture explains that there is the spiritual world there, and it makes much more sense because the material world is who are we going to come back with? We've been in millions of bodies, So which one are we going to come back as? Come back as the 42nd body previous to this, or the 98th body, or
Yeah.
So it doesn't really it doesn't measure up to, in my opinion anyway, to when you actually examine it. Yeah. No. So therefore the description of the spiritual world, and yeah, we did say it, experiencing the spiritual world even while in the material world, that is possible, right?
Yeah.
But it's not that the material world suddenly the material world ultimately is spiritual, but it does take the vision to have that, to see that the material world is spiritual, that it's all coming from God. So in that sense, what you're mentioning is possible, but that means that everyone has to have that vision so that everyone can live here.
To know it's possible.
And that space is not meant for that. It's meant, when you have that spiritual vision, you're in the spiritual dimension. It's just like I explained to this.
And it's more a sacred thing than going and spreading it.
So as far as
It's more sacred, isn't it, than
it
trying
is,
to convert everybody, nearly diluting it.
yeah, because the material world, because the example is that even when Lord Chaitanya was on the planet, everyone who was on the planet was liberated, and some people say, "Oh, there was a planet. What happens then?" No, it's completely filled again. It's a kind of it's a difficult concept, but there's always the people who want to experience what it is like without God, and that's what the material world is, and that's eternal as well. So again, it's that it's a kind of a meditation that we need to develop more in that sense, but it's not absolutely necessary for us to be in the spiritual world even now, not being in full knowledge of all of that at present. But when we do become liberated in that sense from the spiritual world, then we will experience that. Yeah, we'll have all this knowledge of how things are. Any other questions on any of these topics?
remember a story, but it will take a minute to say, but it is very close to what you were just mentioning. So there was a person who actually committed a crime, some criminal act, and then this happened in one of the ISKCON centers. I don't know where it happened, but he actually came running to just hide from the police who was chasing them.
Running from the police, yeah.
You know that?
No.
Oh, okay. So and then he just entered some place, and then he just happened to go in, and then he found people singing and dancing and clapping and all of that, and then he was like, okay, I don't know where I am, but looks like a safer place to hide, and he just was there. He also, the people were like, making some gestures to join and dance and sing and all of that. And it is actually ISKCON, one of the centers. So, and after some time, he said, hey, can I do something here? I want to be here. I want to actually, I feel like, being here more and all of that. And then one of the Prabhujis said, okay, you can be here. Maybe you can do this, you can do that. Maybe you can do some just puja service or whatever, whatever service you can, please do it. And then slowly he started becoming one of the responsible person of the temple, and then he was doing all. One day actually Prabhupada actually was visiting that center, and then the moment he saw him, he was asking the whereabouts of the person, and then he openly said, Guruji, actually this is what happened, and I'm actually a person who committed some. He confessed actually, and then but I liked here, so I'm continuing here, but I didn't tell anybody. But since you asked, I cannot lie, so I told you. And then he said, okay, fine, what you have done is okay, but can you actually go to the police now, right now, and then surrender, telling this is what happened. You explain everything, but you just surrender, and then after that, whatever it is, whatever the law has to do, let it do, and then you come back here, and then you practice whatever you are doing. And then he obliged, and then he went, he surrendered. And then he was put in the front of court, and then the judge was asking, what did you do and where did you go and all of that. And then he said, I am actually serving God in one of the temples, and this is what I did. I somehow felt very safe and happy, so I just continued with that. And the Guruji just told me that I should go and surrender, so I'm here. And then he said, okay, what all you will do from the morning? And then he explained the whole thing. Okay, morning 4 o'clock I wake up, and then I'll do this, that, and then I'll do chanting, and then I'll clean up everything, and then I'll offer prasad to God, and then I'll do all, and then whichever devotees come, I'll actually give them tulsi and tirtha and all of that. And then he explained everything, and then the judge finally said, just to cut the story short, he said, I cannot give much more harsher punishment, so you please go back and continue that. So basically, like, if he is so much disciplined and not doing the service to God, then the thing that you said, right, if somebody is doing just some karma yoga without realizing that, the bhakti yoga, for example, bhakti, for example, now I understand the reason for your answer. I said a thumbs up, but actually you said no. And if you are able to give that bhakti and then make the people realize, they will do anything else that is needed for them. I mean, they can actually transform even others' life. So that's a great.
The amazing thing is that a proper civilization, they will be looking after all the people in difficulties anyway. The situation.
Tourists and children. So this ceremony with the children.
Yeah.
Black people.
Like in a proper society, where people really do care about each other, and they have a goal in mind for what the society is about. They will look after all types of people. There will be it'll be natural for people to look after them, and it will be coming from the goodness of their hearts, which is empowered, by the Supreme, by acting in Krishna consciousness. It's just to try to create societies like that isn't very easy. But that is the ideal goal, is to have a place whereby you have proper spiritual people, proper people who can look after administration, and administrators, they will be totally caring for all the people in the state, and they will look after people in a proper way. There will be proper people who are invested in looking after the economy and stuff like that, and there'll be the working people. So all of those people, the ideal scenario is that they will be all in harmony, serving the supreme source in that sense. So, but it's very difficult in this age when it's completely, all those things are contrary to trying to set up that society. But those things will be natural there. If somebody is hurt, somebody's feeling bad or whatever, they will automatically be being taken care of by the nature of the actual society. So in that sense, the answer that the spiritual energy and that from the chanting of Hare Krishna and from the reading scripture and discussing philosophy and so on, and by performing bhakti or service, the natural outcome of that will be that people will be fit and they'll become qualified to be able to help everybody. That's why they're full of compassion for all conditions. So in that sense, that's the activity that we should concentrate on the most if we can, and automatically those things will follow. You'll find one of my one lady, Urmila Devi Dasi, she's one of the Shiksha, administrators in ISKCON, but she's not an administrator, but she's one of the most politically qualified person, and she has this whole system now worked out early, so that people early on can work out what is their natural inclination, how can I help society in the best possible way. And the idea is that they're spiritual, everyone is a spiritual being, but in any particular society, at any particular body, at any particular time, we have a certain inclination to do something better than other things. So if we can harmonize all those inclinations, and that's why she does this whole course, it's called Career Dharma, and it helps every one of us. Like you often get the position somebody who's in a medical profession but they hate it, or somebody who's is a lawyer but they would much rather do piecework or something. You know what I mean? There's people, because of the society that we're living in. In fact, it's only robots and artificial intelligence now who are taking up all the jobs. So we assume won't have any occupations, but these are the things which we have a natural tendency in a natural society to do something, and that will be beneficial both for ourselves and be beneficial for the society. So that's how the chanting is very, very beneficial as well. Darren, did you want to say anything?
No, I was just going to say, career dharma, before you said it, career dharma was the word.
Yeah.
That's your life, putting your life
Yeah.
in the four fields.
The natural inclination kind of thing to do
Very
something.
interesting,
And that often helps your spiritual life easier as well, because you're doing something you like, so therefore you'll do your spiritual work as well. But a tendency is for us to get caught up in doing the wrong things because of material pressures or whatnot.
It's very important. Yeah. For example, one of the person used to say, it is okay if you go for a job which is half the pay, half the salary, right? If it is actually like making you feel happy, and then it is not intruding in your personal space, for example, right? So I think that kind of a thing is best to practice bhakti, for example.
Yeah, one of our mentors, Krishna Maharaj, he's quoting a study that was done recently, and of the things that people wanted most in their life, One was that they were doing the thing that they like to do as a career. The second was a partner, and the third was health. So that one was the most important one, which is quite interesting, isn't it?
The Ikigai also, the Japanese concept called Ikigai also focuses that. So it is like whatever you do as a mainstream thing, it should be something natural. Like in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says, what is it? I think Prakriti, I think.
To do another's work is dangerous,
Yeah. I don't remember fully, but what is the natural state of being that should be in line with whatever you do in it.
Yeah.
Then it becomes very easy.
Yeah. But even if it's not, which can be the case, the important thing is to develop your chanting and our hearing and your spiritual. So that's why I'm saying that the importance that we can't affect all the things that are going on. You know, I can't tell this person, that person. Like I could spend my whole day worrying about these things, but I'm not going to have any effect on it. You know, and in fact, it'll be very detrimental for me. But if I can learn how to be equipoised amid all of these things and concentrate on what I have to do as service myself to the Supreme, then I'll make progress and I'll actually help other people as well. You know, and they will help me in return. Alignment, yeah.
During the class, 18-day class, somebody was actually sharing the experience. They had a lot of problems with their immediate family members at home, and it was very tough situation at the house. And then after joining the class, she just followed practicing chanting. That's it. She didn't do anything else. She just practiced chanting like twice or thrice a day, 1 or 8 times the Maha Mantra. And then after 2 or 3 days, slowly things started changing, it seems, and then people started behaving differently, and then the house situation became very, very normal slowly, it seems. And she was like, I have done so many things to get to this state, but nothing worked. But just the Maha Mantra helped.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah.
So yeah, it can align other things around us.
The more that we can do that, inculcate the Maha Mantra, the chanting in our lives, and the more that we can spend time understanding the nature of the Spirit, or the more we can perform practical activity, to help the Dharma in that sense, and spreading the Dharma, and more purified we become. Okay, I must say these children were very well behaved. Well done. They were very patient throughout. Thank you so much. And even asked brilliant questions as well.
That's good. I never expected such a question.
No. Keep doing that. Okay, so we're coming to the next part of the program.
Hare Krishna. So I would like to thank everyone for joining us today for Sunday Festival from ISKCON Dublin. So I really thank Manu, His Grace Manu Prabhu, for giving his association and giving such wonderful class. So we can chant 3 times loudly, Hari Bol for Prabhuji. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol. And one more announcement. So as already Prabhu gave his blessings to her, but today's feast is sponsored by Kashri and Kriday. So because her birthday is there, day after tomorrow, so we'd like to chant 3 times Hari Bol for them as well, to give them blessings. Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol.
Oh, yeah, I can do that. Would I do that? Okay. Okay. I just want to give you some information about. We are very close to towards acquiring some land close to Dublin, and we are in the process of trying to negotiate buying land to build a Mandira temple. We're trying to get some land also to demonstrate more practical living, and protection of the Brahminical culture, which means protecting cows, and also growing more natural lifestyle in that sense. We're trying to demonstrate that. But we are today we have tried to reach a certain target. We are a little bit short of that target now. the long-term target we're trying to reach is 250,000 euros by the 31st of August. It's becoming quite crucial now that we get this, because if we don't, we may not be able to get this place, and it's become just available very recently, and it's very ideal. So we had an interim target today to reach 200,000, and what we had reached the last time I looked was 195,300 or 400, something like that, 300. But we're just asking everyone, if you can, think about it, like, for the future. I won't be around for it anyway, for a lot of it anyway. But we wanted to establish some place. This is like a center of learning, more so than anything else, which is what we were doing today. We're discussing, what this is all about. This is what Srila Prabhupada's whole goal is. And this is why Lord Chaitanya's goal. This is Krishna's goal, so we can discuss Bhagavad Gita, and we can live out a demonstration of a lifestyle which is conducive to spiritual life. So this center we're hoping to develop is, let's say where we're at the moment. We put in an offer, which we don't necessarily have all the action for. But sometimes you have to take a risk for God, So we're, as I said, we have an interim goal today. Now, I'm not expecting. It did happen the last time we had a goal, and somebody rang me up at the towards the end and gave a couple of grand and completely finished it off. But which the €5, €10, whatever, that's equally important as well. In the sense of from the activity, as I was saying, that maybe we're not able to do all this chanting, maybe we're not able to do all this research work, but all of us are kind of okay to give a fruit for Krishna, or give some euros for Krishna's temple, to establish a temple. So that is devotional service or bhakti. So I'm asking everybody today if they can. We have kind of a tap machine there that you can just tap something on, or downstairs. I mean, I did today. I donated a certain amount as well myself today. So I'm not asking you to let me do myself. And but it's basically, the sooner we can get this, and the quicker and the more important. We do want to have an effect in society. In this whole in Ireland, we want to have a specific effect of hiring the vibration, giving more spiritual knowledge to people, so that less people will suffer. That they will have an actual clear goal. I can say that this is a scientific process. It absolutely works, and it's experiential. You have to experience it yourself, but it does work, and it will save us from the most dangerous type of fear, which is falling into another body in the next life. Which is the point of death. So it's a scientific process for happiness in this world, because I can guarantee you, when you have that goal in mind, you will feel real happiness within. That will clear out all the miseries. You'll be able to tolerate the miseries by that way. So that's what our goal is, and that's what you're supporting. Nothing else. Nobody else gets paid any money here. Everything we do is voluntary, and it's all for the benefit of from the spiritual perspective. Okay, so that was just an announcement. If anyone can help, they can just tap something there. There's another machine downstairs, but if you can, it really will help, and will get us closer to the goal, and we'll be able to make that sort of last push, and get Krishna's mercy. Haribol, thank you.
And just cash in the donation, is it?
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you.
Haribol.
Haribol.
Thank you so much, everyone. So we can now move to our next part, that is Aarti. So everyone can stand up for it. जय श्री श्री पंचतत्व भगवान की जय पंचतत्वा जय पंचतत्वा जय पंचतत्वा जय पंचतत्वा जय राधा गोविंद राधा गोविंद राधा हरे नमः विष्णु पदाय कृष्ण विष्णु भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी निति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवी गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यादिशकारिणे Oh, Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Hare Hare
Rama
Jai Om Vishnupad Brahmamsa Parivraj Kachaya Stotra Satishi Shivana Samay Grace Sesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Isakhan Chaya Srila Prabhupada Ki Anand Guru Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Ramji Ghosh Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Chamakund Radhakund Giving over the Aniki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jamuna Maya Ki Ganga Maya Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Harinam Sankirtan Yagya Ki Riyat Matanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Iskon Ireland Ki Gopi Manande All glories to the assembled devotees All glories to the assembled devotees All glories to the assembled devotees All glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga.
Namaste, Narasimhaya.
Krishna. So thank you so much for joining today. And now we will proceed for prasadam, which is downstairs. One minute. And today, special prasadam in Mumbai style has been made by Yash Prabhu. So we would like to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra for them and for all the volunteers who help. So we will chant together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Can I see a song? Can I see a song?
Yeah, those who want to proceed for prasadam, they can, and those who want to join for kirtan, they can stay. Hare Bol.
Ram